Most people with hypothyroidism are making this mistake, and it could be harming you. Are you making it? If you are, it's not your fault. Most likely your doctor told you to do this, and it's what they were taught as well. Unfortunately, it is hurting a lot of people. And so please hear what I have to say in this video so that you can make an informed decision about whether or not you want to do something. You may not want to do anything after hearing this, and that's okay, but at least you have this information. So what is this mistake? Thinking that the thyroid medication that your doctor prescribed, like levothyroxine, Synthroid, Nature-Throid, Armour, all of these things are the only thing that you can do for your hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's. To explain why this is faulty thinking, let's dig a little deeper into what hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's are. The thyroid is a butterfly-shaped gland that is in your neck that produces thyroid hormones. These hormones have downstream functions in your body, most of your organ systems. Things like controlling energy production, your body temperature, and even your moods and emotions. When you get diagnosed with hypothyroidism, it means that your thyroid cannot keep up with this thyroid hormone production, and it is considered to be sluggish. Hypo means low. Most doctors will look at a certain marker in your blood, thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH, and if that is out of range, will prescribe you a medication that will make up that thyroid hormone that you cannot make. Therefore, your functions downstream of your thyroid, things like that energy production and your body temperature, can go back to normal. So things are all great, right? Everything is hunky-dory and life can go back to normal and everything is wonderful, right? Not so fast. The question you really should be asking is, what is causing your thyroid to be sluggish or hypothyroid in the first place? Now, this is where conventional doctors will usually stop and they say, it doesn't matter anyway, because the treatment is going to be exactly the same. So there's no point in really finding out why. But let's dig a little deeper, shall we? If you don't live in a third world country where iodine sources aren't prevalent in your food, chances are that your hypothyroidism is autoimmune in nature. This means that you are producing antibodies against your own tissue. The most common autoimmune disease for hypothyroidism is Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Now, to be clear, Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism are two totally different things. However, according to the American Thyroid Association, the main cause of hypothyroidism in the US is Hashimoto's. And according to Isabella Wentz, who is a leading Hashimoto's authority, up to 90% of those hypothyroidism cases are caused by Hashimoto's. So it's pretty prevalent. And that means chances are pretty good that if you do live in a Western developed country and haven't been told specifically that your hypothyroidism is because of a lack of iodine or because of cancer or postpartum thyroiditis, that you have Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Note that I am not a doctor, so this is definitely not an official diagnosis. I'm just relaying information to you. If you do want to try to get that official diagnosis, there are blood tests that can be run, things like the thyroid peroxidase and the thyroid globulin antibody test, or an ultrasound can often get that diagnosis for you. However, I will point out that many doctors will refuse to do these tests because it doesn't change their treatment and they don't really believe in any of this or that it makes a difference. So getting that diagnosed can be a little bit tricky. However, if you just want to play along in this video with the idea that you may have Hashimoto's, then you may get a lot out of it. So with Hashimoto's, the short story is that your body has kind of gone awry. If you remember back to 8th grade science, you may have learned about antibodies, where these attach to things like pathogens, viruses, and bacteria, things that you don't want in your body. And they mark them to say that they are bad, and then cells will come and destroy them. This is a good thing because it keeps you healthy and alive. However, it's not such a great thing when those antibodies turn on your own thyroid tissue and mark them for attack instead. That's what's called autoimmunity, when your body attacks itself. According to Dr. Alessio Fasano, who is the director for the Center of Celiac Research and Treatment at Massachusetts General Hospital, there are 3 things that need to be in place for autoimmunity to develop. You need to have a genetic predisposition. So that means you have to have the genes in place that will actually say that you get these kind of diseases. You have to have triggers that turn on the genes. So things like your environment, toxins, foods, your lifestyle. And then also intestinal permeability, also known as leaky gut. And this is where there are small holes in the intestinal wall where food particles and pathogens can get through into the bloodstream. Not a good situation whatsoever. We'll come back to all this in a bit though. Now, autoimmunity is pretty common these days. The American Autoimmune Research Association estimates that there are about 50 million people in the US alone that have an autoimmune condition. I suspect it's actually higher than that because you may have an autoimmune disease going on in the background many years before you actually exhibit any sort of symptoms and go to a doctor to get a diagnosis. And really, that's because with things like Hashimoto's, it can take years for the attack to happen before any symptoms start to show up. The attack just starts happening slowly, and over a period of time, enough tissue gets destroyed, and then you have symptoms. And that's when you go to the doctor and they do a blood test and they test your TSH and they find that it's out of range and they give you medication and then you start to feel better. Here's the most important thing to note. The autoimmune attack against your thyroid has not stopped at all. The medication does not stop the attack. Let me repeat that. The medication that you take for your thyroid does not stop the attack against your thyroid. So your thyroid still gets destroyed. I think of it like a beautiful house where you are constantly painting the front and gardening and making sure your lawn looks beautiful and everything like that so that your neighbors think that you are really great. But inside the house, it is being attacked, all the floors, everything else by termites. And eventually the termites win, everything crumbles, and you're left with this beautiful facade with nothing behind it, kind of like one of those old Western movies. And I think of it this way because the thyroid is producing hormone this way out to the front, but behind it, all of the tissue is getting destroyed. If you've been on medication for a while, you may notice that some of your symptoms have come creeping back. Or you may notice that you have what is classically hyperthyroid symptoms, like heart palpitations or insomnia, night sweats, and even anxiety. So at that point, you go to your doctor, they test your TSH, and they adjust your medication. But eventually, these adjustments just don't work anymore. And that's what happened to me. 6 years into my hypothyroidism diagnosis, I had gone back to my doctor because I was starting to feel a lot of symptoms. And he just kept on adjusting my medication month after month, but things never got better. And 2 years after that, things just spiraled out of control until I was a mom of 2 toddlers who could barely move. I had no life. I was a shell of my former self because I was so tired and so brain fogged and so many symptoms that I just could not handle it. And I felt so alone. My doctor said there was nothing that I could do other than take the medication. And so I was so worried that at 34, 35, that I was my life was over at that point. It is not a good feeling to have. But the thing is, there is so much more that you can be doing. Remember back when I said there are 3 things that have to be present in order for autoimmunity to happen? Well, the good news is we can actually affect some of those things. Now, the first one, the genetic predisposition, you can't affect that. You're born with your genes and you can't change that. So let's just forget that one for now. But the expression of your genes, turning them on and off, you can completely change that by things in your lifestyle, in your environment, removing yourself from toxins, your diet, all kinds of stuff like that. And then intestinal permeability or leaky gut can completely be healed by changing your diet and also some of these same things of toxins and lifestyle and all that kind of stuff. This then stops the autoimmune attack from the root cause. It allows you to have an entire house, beautiful house with a beautiful front and a beautiful in the middle of it that's not being attacked by termites. And so many of my clients, readers, viewers over the years have found so much relief by making changes in their life. And many have been able to put their Hashimoto's into complete remission, which means there is no trackable autoimmune activity whatsoever. I did this for myself and I feel great because of it. And if you want to know more about my story, I have plenty of videos on this channel. And since you may also be wondering, and it's a question I get a lot, Do those of us that have stopped the autoimmune attack and put our autoimmune disease into remission still have to take thyroid medication? And the answer is it depends, but a lot of us do, because unfortunately the autoimmune attack has destroyed enough of my thyroid tissue over those 8 years that I didn't know that I had an autoimmune disease that I can't produce that thyroid hormone anymore. So I have to take it every day. But I don't consider that to be a loss or anything. It's not a failure. To me, it's another tool in my toolbox. And I'm very happy that I have that ability to do that. But the purpose of this video is to give you this knowledge so that way you can just choose whether or not to use it. And if you do choose to use it, you may be able to get off thyroid medication or avoid it completely. And if you don't, then at least you have it. I wish I had been given this information in the beginning, because I probably would have done something about it earlier before so much of my thyroid was destroyed. And now I don't have a lot of wiggle room. I have to be very strict with my lifestyle and diet. But I hope that I can get to you before that happens. That way you have more wiggle room. And if it is later in the process for you and you have gotten quite a bit of your thyroid destroyed, at least you know that you have hope that there are things that you can do. So what are the things that can stop the autoimmune attack and make sure further damage to your thyroid is either stopped or at least drastically slowed down? That's what we talk about in this video. I'll see you next time.